Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Crash and I'm going to ask you two questions and I want to see if you guys can answer them. First question is, do you know who the first mangaka is? The actual answer to that question is kinda hard to pinpoint, but a lot of you probably said Osamu Tezuka. Astro Boy is praised for being the first manga as we know manga to be today. What if I asked you, what is the most popular manga magazine in the world? While that sounds like a more subjective question, the answer is actually pretty objective and obvious. Weekly Shounen Jump's popularity cannot be denied, and it produced many of the hit manga and anime from the 80s and onwards. So, if I was to combine the two questions and ask who was the first mangaka of the most popular manga magazine in the world, you would assume that it would be public knowledge, that whoever has that accolade is famous, if anything else, by that factor alone. Opening the pages of the first issue of Weekly Shounen Jump, that's an honor that can only happen once. But how many of you do know who this person is? I'm going to go on a limb and say that maybe not no one, but very few of you probably do. It's not really an author that Jump talks about, as far as I can tell, and it's not someone who was successful in any capacity. This man opened the pages of the biggest manga magazine in the world, and then fell into obscurity. So let's go back to issue number 1 of Shounen Jump, published in August 1st of 1968. There's two series that are in this issue. The one that doesn't matter to us is Shishi no Tamashi, but the debut manga, the one featured in the cover, is one called Kujira Daigo. The Weekly Shounen Jump exhibition catalog says the following about the manga. The protagonist, Kujira Daigo, is a boy with a giant body and an even bigger heart, and is determined to do whatever it takes to create a school where even the poor can experience the joy of learning. This monumental work was featured in full color on the cover and first page of Shounen Jump's very first issue. Monumental work is an interesting way to call what essentially was the first manga to be accessed in Jump. Yes, the first manga that debuted was also the first they cancelled. Shounen Jump has not changed in 50 years. So, who was the man behind Kujira Daigo? Well, is one called Sachio Umemoto, and there's not that much information about him that I could find, even in the Japanese Wikipedia. But let's go through what I did find. Sachio Umemoto sensei was born February 6, 1943 in the Koichi prefecture, and he will start his work as an assistant to two mangaka, Satoru Masaki and more notoriously Chiba Tetsuya, the name behind Shiro no Joe. I couldn't find any information if Umemoto actually was an assistant in Joe, but having in mind Tetsuya's extensive list of works, it's unlikely that that was the case. He originally did manga to be rented in private bookstores. This was a common practice in Japan until the last 60 or so years. It's also known as Kashihon if you wanna search more about it. That was until 1968. Shueisha wanted to create the magazine that could go against the titans of shonen at the time, Weekly Shonen Magazine and Weekly Shonen Sunday. This would become Shonen Jump and, a year later, Weekly Shonen Jump. Instead of hiring famous mangaka or try to take the rival's roster, Shueisha decided to grab new and lesser known mangaka, offer them exclusive contracts and try to nurture them into the next big things. And it worked with manga like Go Nagai, who would later create Devilman. Sachio Umemoto was one of them, and the chosen one to open the pages of the first issue. Now, there's very little I could find about Kujira Daigo that I could tell you about. The important thing is that it got cancelled decently quick. In issue number 11, just 11 issues after issue number 1, you probably did not need me to explain that, did you? Umemoto would be given a second chance in Jump in 1969 with its second work called Bakuatsu Yaro, a manga that was even less information about it than its predecessor, mostly just being this image from the Jump cover it debuted in. It lasted 15 issues, from the 1st to the 15th of 1969, before suffering the same fate as Daigo. A third manga would debut 10 issues later, Harakure, and it will last until issue number 15 of the following year. It was the longest of its Jump manga, lasting 19 chapters. Then he apparently left Jump because he didn't like the exclusive contract they made, and maybe because they kept cancelling his manga. I don't know. The truth is, once he moved to other magazines, it got much success. At least his manga weren't being cancelled. But he also was only in charge of the art style. 1970 would see Umemoto debuting in Shonen Sunday, with the work Tobenai Tsubasa, penned by Maki Isao, but it would be in 1971 that he would work on his biggest title. Bashi Yakyugen was written by a man called Anado Kobako, and it even had an anime adaptation in the same year. It was Umemoto at his peak. 6 volumes and 2 years later, the manga would reach its end, and Umemoto kept shifting between magazines, publishing obscure titles well into the 80s. 1981 saw his return to Shonen Jump with another title, not written by him. Makenchi was written by Manoma Makodi, and it was cancelled after 2 volumes. God damn it, Sachio. Sachio Umemoto would die 12 years later, in his house in September of 1993. Victim of an intracranial hemorrhage, he would only be 50 years old by the time of his passing, his legacy being very little. When talking about Jump, it's easy to talk about the bigger names, the Eiichiro Odas and the Kira Toriyamas of the world. Even when looking back at the early years, the titles that stuck are from Go Nagai or Hiroshi Motoemiya. They were the successes that pushed Jump forward, but inside the magazine pages, tons of mangaka are published and get forgotten. It's amazing, because the fact that you can write a single chapter that appears on a single issue of Weekly Shounen Jump should be a sign that you are a pretty capable mangaka. But there's a lot of Sachio Umemotos in the world, and I think we should remember them. And if you watched till here, thank you very much, and I'll see you next video.